So I've got a lot of responses from cynics about the last video that I made, America sucks because you suck, and here are their arguments and my counter-arguments to address them. These same arguments that they come up with I keep seeing over and over, so I'm hoping that by addressing them like this, I can put them to rest once and for all. No candidate can change the system, it's just too far gone. You'd have to change the majority of Congress who are corrupt and self-serving. You'd also have to change the corporations and the banks. Yeah, that's true. No one candidate can change the entire system all on their own. However, lots of candidates can change the system together. And you're absolutely right, we do need to change the majority of Congress. Most people in Congress, regardless of which of the two parties that they say that they belong to, they're still owned by the military-industrial complex, the prison-industrial complex, the Wall Street banks. That's an absolutely correct analysis of the situation. But you also still have the power of the vote. We can vote them out of office. If enough people start acting like responsible citizens and actually investigate candidates and where their money comes from, and stop trusting that someone has their best interests at mind because they're a Republican or a Democrat and they talk a good game, and actually look at the candidate a little bit closer, actually find out what their positions on policies are, actually learn a little bit about how the world works and how those policies would play out, instead of religiously believing in one political party over another. If we did that in defense of our Constitution, in defense of your own best interests, we could non-violently kick these fuckers out of office through the power of the vote. The vote is essentially a non-violent way to hold a coup. We have a coup every 2 years. That's like the thing about democracy, is that it's an ongoing transformation of government. Rather than firing a bullet to remove a corrupt official from office, you vote, which is an amazing and revolutionary idea. It used to be that force was the only way that you could change your government. It used to be that if you didn't like the king, you had to walk up to the king and fucking cut his head off with a sword. We don't have to do that anymore. Those days are behind us now. Now, you're in charge of your government. We all are. The problem isn't just that the system is corrupt. The problem is that you're also not fully participating, or if you are participating, not participating in a meaningful way in the act of self-governance. Now, as I stated in my previous video, there are two major groups in the United States. There are those who vote, and vote consistently for one of the two corrupt parties, for corrupt candidates that do not represent their best interests. These people keep on voting for the same corrupt assholes who keep fucking everybody over. And they do so because of this partisan Stockholm syndrome, where they have a religious faith in one political party over another. I say religious faith because it requires them to deny reality, deny congressional record, deny facts, in order to uphold their support of one political party for the simple fact that they have a D or an R next to their name. Then there's the other group of people who do not vote at all because they don't want to support the system. The thing is, though, is that the majority of Americans do not vote. 60% regularly in even presidential elections, and it's lower in non-presidential elections, the off-season congressional elections. Those elections, voter turnout is even lower. In an off-congressional year, like local municipal elections or referenda elections, you're lucky to see 15%. That's high. That means 85% of eligible voters are not voting in those elections. Clearly, neither of these strategies, voting for the corrupt assholes or not voting and letting other people vote for the corrupt assholes, neither of those are working. We need more options on the table. We need third parties. Oh, but wait, maybe your state has really fucked up ballot access laws. Well, it seems like you probably ought to start running for office so that you can change that fucked up ballot access law, huh? Maybe in order to do that, because the Democrats and Republicans have jiggered the system so that only Democrats or Republicans can run, maybe you need to run in the Democratic or Republican primary. And maybe you'll need to do a fuck ton of work organizing your district to make sure that you win the nomination of that party. Or maybe you need to do a fuck ton of work organizing your district to make sure that you meet the requirements that are required by that fucked up ballot access law, in order to get on the ballot as a third-party candidate. And maybe then, if you get on the ballot as a third-party candidate, you'll have to do a fuck ton of work to get 33% plus 1 votes out of the district, so that you can win your election and participate in the halls of power as a legislator, so that you can then reform those fucked up ballot access laws. And then maybe if you don't win your election, you should continue doing organizing work with organizations like Common Cause, Fair Vote, Free and Fair Elections, or all three of them, all of which are non-profit, non-partisan organizations that are committed to fairer ballot access and election laws. Now, while winning these reforms is not impossible, nobody said it was going to be easy. Well, it's a catch-22 then. I already explained why voting doesn't work. It's one of the tenets of the Occupy movement that the system isn't working now and we have to go outside it to demand real change. So the Occupy movement isn't making demands because that assumes that those in office who are bought and corrupt are willing to coalesce to our demands. To make demands on a system that is incapable of fulfilling them is silly. There is no way that they can coalesce to our demands if we made demands. For them to coalesce to our demands would be to fundamentally and radically alter the way that politics works in the United States so that they would not be able to hold the positions of power and do the things they do. Our demands make the existence of a bot Congress impossible. For them to coalesce would be for them to eliminate their existence. But one has to understand power relations. The one thing that the bot Congress wants from us is our vote. Or if we're not going to vote for the bot Congress, for us to not vote. Withholding our vote does not do anything, because the jackasses with the partisan blinders on will always vote for the corrupt Republican or the corrupt Democrat. That person will not cross party lines to vote for somebody who would actually legislate in our favor. Now, that person who could actually legislate in our favor, depending on if they win a primary, that person could be a Republican, that person could be a Democrat, that person could be a third-party candidate. Now see, Wall Street understands power relations, and they understand our electoral system. Those in office want to stay in office. To stay in office, they need to be good enough to fool just 50% plus 1 of the voting population, making them think that they're on their side. For instance, my Congresswoman, Shelley Pingree, who talked a good game during the primaries, about how we needed to investigate the Bush administration for war crimes and torture and lying in getting us up in the lead up to the Iraq War, and how we needed to prosecute the people who were in the CIA and the military who engaged in torture and war crimes, how we needed to get out of Iraq and Afghanistan, slash military spending dramatically to be more in line with the TrueMajority.org federal budget. Shelley Pingree campaigned on repealing the USA Patriot Act and the Military Commissions Act. She campaigned on the impeachment of George W. Bush and Dick Cheney for war crimes, violations of the Constitution, and unconstitutional and illegal wars. But as soon as she got into office, she started voting to fund the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. She suddenly started talking a different game about holding the Bush administration accountable, saying that it was in the past and there's nothing that we can do now. She voted for the NDAA, which contained provisions for indefinite detention of United States citizens, which codified the things that our government was previously doing illegally, that the Bush administration was doing illegally, that we progressives hated while Bush was doing, that we now turn a blind eye to now that it's Obama who's doing it, and now that it's Obama who's codified it into law, now that it's the Democrats in Congress who have codified it into law. Since getting into office, she's flip-flopped on the position of cutting military spending, saying that it would hurt jobs. So she's pulled a total 180 on most all the issues that I care about. So I'm not gonna vote for her in 2012. I'm gonna vote third party. I'm not gonna vote Republican because those people are just as bad, unless there's somebody from OWS who runs in a primary against the Republican challenger. I'm probably going to vote Green if we have a candidate running with a Green party. And if nobody else is running, I would love to run myself against her, except that I'm not old enough. Voting is an illusion. Nobody we can elect can withstand the corruption. Well, if you're so confident that nobody can withstand corruption, you probably ought to run yourself. I mean, you're probably capable of withstanding corruption, right? Why don't you run? I'm serious. You should run. But they would never allow someone like me to run. I'm not mainstream. I would not be prepared to play ball with corporate America, nor am I prepared to keep my mouth shut. Nor would I allow those greedy, murdering SOBs to continue poisoning our lands and our children and get away with it. Perfect, man. You sound like somebody that I would vote for. However, there is no they that is going to prevent you from getting on the ballot. They is us. To get on the ballot requires gathering signatures from your neighbors. the they is your neighbors. By saying that there is a they who control everything, all the events in the world, you're abdicating control of your own life and destiny. By saying that there's a they who can control world events, you're shirking your own responsibility to live your best life. To say that there's some shadowy organization that controls all world events is a total cop-out. In reality, all dictatorships fall eventually. They get lazy, they fuck up, their systems oppress people too much, and then there's, revolt. We don't really have dictators here. With the legislation that's being passed, we're creating the precedent for it, but we don't currently have dictators here in the United States yet. We still have elections. They're maybe not the most open, free, or fair elections, but we still have them. And we can rescue our democracy from the edge of oblivion before it becomes totally meaningless. But it's gonna take a fuck ton of work. Nobody said it was gonna be easy. This shit is hard work. It's called self-governance. It makes no difference who you vote for, you still end up with the same BS. Really? Tell that to Bernie Sanders, or Dennis Kucinich, or Paul Wellstone, or Frank Zeidler, who was the Socialist Party mayor of Milwaukee, Wisconsin from 1948 till 1960. What better people do you think there are out there? You think America's just kind of split between kind, caring individuals who'll do things right at a higher consistency than everybody else? We've just hit a run of bad luck with only the everybody else running? Personally, I don't vote because I'm an idealist, not because I'm lazy, so fuck you. Don't pretend to know everybody's intentions. You know what? It doesn't matter if you don't vote because you're an idealist, which, whatever, or if you're trying to do it for practical reasons. It doesn't matter what your intentions are. It matters what the outcomes are. And the outcomes are, if you don't vote, you get the same results as if you vote for the corrupt assholes. Not voting is equally as bad as voting for the same corrupt assholes that you claim not to support. So much for your idealism. Free stuff's cool. You should take an envelope. It's addressed to you, and then fold it up, and then put it in an envelope that's addressed to me. Put a stamp on it before you put it in. Send it to me, to this address here, and then I will take that envelope out, and I will put cool stuff in it, and then, since you already put a stamp on it, I don't have to pay for shipping, and then I will put it in a mailbox, and then ship it to you. Sound good? Alright, get free stuff.